My entitled sister falsely accused my wife of infidelity and blackmailed her, hoping to win favor with our parents. I exposed her, and now my parents cut her off. I'm 36, a guy who's always been family-oriented. I never thought twice about putting family first until recently. My little sister, the same girl I'd defended through thick and thin, decided that sabotaging my marriage would be her golden ticket to impressing our parents. And I know how that sounds, but this is what happened. It all started last December, when my sister moved back in with our parents. She'd had some trouble, quit her job, went through a breakup, and thought moving home would be a fresh start. My parents were thrilled to have her back, especially since she's always been the one needing a bit of extra attention. She's nearly 30, but acts like the world owes her. And for as long as I can remember, she's always had this streak of entitlement. It's like she thinks being the baby of the family makes her untouchable, above criticism. I'd been dealing with her passive-aggressive digs for a while. At first, they were just annoying, something to brush off. But the moment she moved back home, her antics hit a new low. She started by stirring the pot with our parents, planting these little ideas about me and my wife. My wife and I have been married for 10 years, but we've chosen not to have kids. We're both focused on our careers, and while we love kids, the timing just hasn't felt right. This has been a sore spot for my parents. They want grandkids, and my sister has always made a point of rubbing that in. From day one, she began dropping snide comments about our modern marriage. She'd casually bring it up in conversation with my parents, saying things like, "It's too bad they don't want to start a family. Guess they're too busy for that kind of responsibility." To her, my wife's career was this convenient excuse for not giving my parents the grandkids they wanted. It was such a petty dig, but it was effective. Every time she said something like that, I could see my mom's face tighten, the disappointment in her eyes. But that wasn't enough for her. She had to push it further. One night, I overheard her on the phone with my mom, talking in a low voice. She was saying things like, "It's just strange, don't you think? She's always away on these work trips. Who knows what's really going on?" My mom sounded concerned, asking what she meant, and my sister just sighed, acting like she didn't want to say too much. But I knew what she was doing, leaving just enough suspicion to make my mom wonder. When I confronted her about it, she acted all innocent, claiming she was only concerned and that I was overreacting. She had this smirk on her face, like she'd won something. And that's when I realized she was trying to drive a wedge between me and my parents, using my wife as the scapegoat. I let it slide, hoping it would blow over, but of course, she just escalated. A few weeks later, at a family dinner, she made this offhand comment about my wife's recent trip. "I bet it must be nice for her to get a break from family responsibilities," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. My wife looked at her, clearly confused, and asked, "What do you mean by that?" My sister just shrugged, pretending it was no big deal. "Oh, nothing. Just that you're always traveling. I'm sure it's nice to get away." My wife didn't take it seriously, but I did. I could see exactly what she was doing, sowing seeds of doubt, making my parents question my wife's loyalty. Then came her evidence. She'd found a random Facebook post from someone with a similar first name as my wife's. This woman had been out with friends, and my sister took a screenshot, showing it to my mother like it was some smoking gun. "See," she whispered to my mom, "I told you. She's out with people, who knows where." When my mom confronted me about it, I had to explain that it was literally just some random woman with the same name. But the damage was done. My mom didn't look convinced, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind, questioning things that weren't even there. By the time spring rolled around, I was exhausted. I didn't want to drag my wife into it, but she noticed the tension. Then one day, she came to me, her face pale. My sister had gone directly to her, claiming she knew my wife was cheating and had proof to show my parents. But then she hinted that maybe it could all go away if my wife could convince me to help her out financially. That's right, my sister wanted a loan. She figured she could blackmail us with fake evidence to get money. It was all a ploy, and I couldn't believe the audacity. When my wife told me, I felt a surge of anger like nothing I'd ever felt before. But I knew blowing up would just give her more ammunition. So I told my wife to hold tight, that I'd handle it. I started recording every interaction, every conversation where she tried to manipulate my parents or throw dirt on my wife's reputation. And sure enough, I caught her red-handed. She'd even created fake text messages, pretending they were from my wife, and used burner numbers to create false texts that implied my wife was sneaking around. Then came the 4th of July. My parents were hosting a family barbecue, and I knew she'd be there, waiting for her moment to strike. I figured it was the perfect time to expose her. We were all sitting around the table, chatting, when she decided to make her move. She launched into a speech about how sad it was when families had to deal with dishonesty. She looked right at my wife, her eyes full of fake sympathy, and said, "It must be hard for you, with all this distance in your marriage. I just hope you guys can work it out." My wife was speechless, but I didn't hesitate. I leaned forward and said, "What exactly do you mean by distance?" I kept my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. My sister faltered for a moment, but then she leaned into it, saying, "Oh, I just mean with all the work trips and, the rumors." Rumors? I pressed, pulling out my phone. I opened up the files I'd saved, the recordings of her lies, the fake profiles she'd created, the messages she'd forged. I showed everything to my parents, the clear evidence of her manipulations. My dad's face turned red, and my mom looked horrified, but I wasn't finished. I played the audio of her trying to blackmail my wife, her voice clear as day, saying she could make the problem disappear if we helped her out financially. The silence was thick. My parents were shocked, my wife was devastated, and my sister, her face was drained of all color. She started stammering, saying she didn't mean for it to go this far, that it was all a misunderstanding, that she was just trying to help. But nobody was buying it anymore. My dad looked at her, his voice like ice, and told her she wasn't welcome in their house until she made things right. They cut off her financial support, something she relied on heavily since she'd never held down a stable job. They told her she had to apologize and show she was changing her ways, or she'd be on her own. But instead of apologizing, she decided to make us pay. She launched into what felt like a personal campaign of revenge, ramping up her entitlement to a level I hadn't thought possible. Here's just a taste of what she did. First, she started a smear campaign among our extended family. She called up aunts, uncles, and cousins, telling them I'd fabricated evidence against her to make her look bad, claiming my wife and I had brainwashed our parents into cutting her off out of jealousy. It was absurd, but she knew how to twist things just enough to make people question me. For weeks, I got calls from family members, people asking if something was wrong, wondering why I'd turned against my own sister. Then she went after my wife's job. She somehow tracked down a couple of my wife's co-workers on social media, started following them, liking their posts, and leaving comments as if they were best friends. She even managed to bump into one of my wife's colleagues at a coffee shop, introducing herself as my wife's concerned sister-in-law. She hinted at all sorts of drama, making it sound like my wife was some scandalous figure. When my wife found out, she was mortified. It was like my sister had violated her personal space in a way that was both creepy and humiliating. Finally, my sister took to social media. She posted cryptic, passive-aggressive updates that were clearly aimed at us. Things like, "Some people will do anything to look good, even if it means betraying their own family," and "Funny how loyalty only works one way for some people." She even posted old family photos with captions like, "Miss the days when family actually meant something." Friends and family kept reaching out, asking what was going on, which was exactly what she wanted, attention and pity. It was juvenile, it was exhausting, but it was also effective. My wife and I distanced ourselves as much as possible, but it hurt to realize that this was my own sister, someone I'd once protected, now trying to tear my life apart piece by piece. It was clear she wasn't going to stop, not until she had somehow redeemed herself in my parents' eyes and dragged us down in the process. She wanted our family's sympathy, our family's validation, and she'd do anything to get it, even if it meant crossing every line imaginable. I decided to go no contact for a while, hoping she'd burn out on her own, but she just doubled down. She started sending me messages, apologizing one minute and blaming me the next. She'd write things like, "I can't believe you're doing this to me. I've always looked up to you, and if you'd only supported me like a real brother, none of this would have happened." It was endless, a twisted cycle of guilt-tripping, pity-seeking, and pure manipulation. It was exhausting, and I could see it was wearing on my wife even more than it was on me. One night, I sat down with my parents and laid everything out. I told them how much this was affecting my marriage, my work, my mental health. I reminded them of every cruel and manipulative thing my sister had done, and I didn't hold back. I explained that I'd reached a point where I could no longer tolerate her toxicity, not when it was poisoning every aspect of my life. My parents sat there in silence, looking more tired and defeated than I'd ever seen them. Finally, my dad spoke up. He told me he understood, that he'd seen enough of her behavior to know I wasn't exaggerating. My mom, though she was hesitant, she was caught between wanting to protect her youngest child and recognizing the hurt she'd caused. She kept saying, "But she's family. We have to find a way to help her." And I realized that, no matter what my sister did, there would always be this part of them that wanted to protect her, that wanted to believe she could change. I told them I respected their feelings, but that I couldn't keep sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of family loyalty. I'd spent years trying to make excuses for her, years hoping she'd grow up. But it was clear now, she wasn't going to change, not unless she faced real consequences. And if those consequences meant losing her family's support, then that was a choice she'd made. After that conversation, things finally began to calm down. My parents stopped engaging with her games, and gradually, she lost her audience. She tried one last attempt at a grand gesture, posting a long, dramatic apology on social media, saying how broken she was and how much she'd learned. She painted herself as the misunderstood victim, hoping for a flood of sympathy. But by then, most people saw through it. It was clear that her apology was just another attempt to manipulate, to turn herself into the center of attention. In the end, my sister faded out of our lives. She moved to another city, claimed she needed a fresh start, and disappeared from the family radar. My parents were sad, of course, but they finally seemed to understand that there was nothing more they could do. As for me and my wife, we picked up the pieces and focused on moving forward, grateful to be free from the constant drama. Reflecting on it now, it's bittersweet. I lost a sister, someone I once cared about deeply. But I gained something more important, the strength to set boundaries, to protect my peace. I learned that sometimes family can be the hardest bond to break, but when someone's determined to destroy your happiness, you have to choose your own well-being, even if it hurts. I don't know what the future holds for my sister. Maybe one day she'll find a way to grow past this, to own up to the hurt she caused. But for now, I'm at peace with the distance. Sometimes the only way to heal is to walk away and let the person find their own path, even if that path never leads back to you.